Good morning, welcome to the episode of Breakfast Analysis. It has been far too long, but I've been swamped with exams, and so I decided to take some time off from recording YouTube videos and paying as much attention to Challenger League to focus on those, but they're all done now, and so I can finally get back to talking about Rainbow Six, which is what I like to do, more than writing probability exams, so here we are. It's obviously been a season. I said that at the start of Challenger League season number 11, I would be making quite a lot of videos on the season as it goes on, and obviously with exams, I kind of slacked on that, but back making another one now. We are 5 games into the season so far, so I want to just sort of go over these teams, basically just go over where the season is at. I did this back, I think, after the first playday was my most recent video on this topic, and a lot's changed since then, so let's go over these teams. This is going to be mostly for people who, might not be paying as close attention to the Challenger League scene. This is going to be for people who maybe are just getting into it now that Pro League is over. You're wanting to watch more Challenger League, so you've only seen a play day or two, and you're kind of still confused maybe a bit on every team, or maybe you haven't jumped into it yet. Whatever the case, we'll go over sort of the identities, if you want, of the teams that are playing inside the league. Who's where, which teams are really ones to watch out for, and which ones are sort of just battling to get out of the bottom. So that's kind of all I wanted to do today, just go over some of these teams relatively generally. We'll go through them in random order, as usual, and just talk a little bit about them one by one. Hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea. We'll start with Senshi. Senshi's going to be the first team to talk about, and this team is currently sitting in 7th. I think 7th is probably where I would put them as well. I think they're pushing in for 6th, but they're a team that's definitely down towards the bottom. I think 6th or 7th is probably where most people are going to put this team. They've really had a mixed season, I would say. I mean, they started off with a pretty terrible week against Bra, then they were able to take some games off Reckless. I mean, you go through the season, there's a few victories here and there against some good teams, notably week 4 against PogChamp that had a really good 7-2 map over them. Otherwise, though, since you haven't really found a lot of success, they're kind of your standard, meh tier team in Challenger League. They've got a lot of the problems that I think most teams at the lower end of this league struggle with. So, they die early quite a bit when they really shouldn't be. They're pretty inconsistent. They have their star players. I think Cardama's has been a really bright spot for this team so far this season. I think Thomas has been good as well. Thomas has got a knack for coming into these younger, lower level teams and really boosting them up. I wouldn't say he's really done I shouldn't say that. I don't think he's really elevated this team to the same level that he's elevated some other teams. I think he's brought them up. I think Thomas certainly has added a lot to this team, but clearly it's not been enough so far for them to really push to the heights of Challenger League, which I think is really disappointing for these guys. I think they struggle a lot, even with the basic stuffs like site selection, map bans. They really seem to kind of screw themselves over. They do play a lot of maps. They've played every single map in the map pool so far this season. They're the only team that can claim that. But it does feel like that kind of hinders them more than it helps them. It feels like this is a team that maybe is biting off more than they can chew a lot of the time, and I do think that they sort of struggle because of it. Again, there's some bright spots here, and I think this team could have a future if they stick together and they continue to work on some of these things. But again, I think that some of these players just are not really at the same level as some of the other players inside the league. So, Senshi are maybe one of your bottom tier teams just due to the fact that they struggle with a lot of the decision-making skills and, I don't know, have to rely on a couple individual players at times that are considerably more inconsistent than you would like to be. But, I think there's some hope for them to maybe claw their way out of the bottom. Vanquish, the next team I want to talk about. This team is currently sitting at the top of the leaderboard. They sit in 1st right now in Challenger League. I'd probably put them around 2nd if I had to rank. I've ranked them all, and I'm going to tell you my ranking of them as we go through these teams. But I do think that the Vanquish are one of the best teams in the league. Most of the season, they've been at the very top of my tier list. Only after probably last week, I've moved them down to about 2nd, and that's not because they had a bad week, but they played against Senshi. They 7-3, 7-2 them last week. Senshi, I mean, no offense to the guys on Senshi. Again, I'm really good friends with Thomas. I like those players. I just haven't been having the best of seasons. But no, I think that Vanquish have been a pretty strong team overall. They're obviously the team that used to be known as Rise Nation. Way back in the day, they were known as Mouse Sports in Pro League. This team has been around since, I want to say, Season 4. Obviously, they've changed their organization and their name and their roster around quite a bit in that time. But the core of this team has been around for a long, long time, no matter what metric you go by. and they clearly bring a lot of experience to this league. I would say compared to the other top teams in the league, they're a lot more structured. They go very quickly into the bomb sites. Their attacks are really, really fast and well coordinated, which is not something we see even from some of the other top teams in the league. So it's really nice to see. They don't do anything like super wild and crazy with their strats, but I do think their strategies are quite good. I think Remorse clearly has been working with this team a lot on their strategies, and they seem to be up to snuff with the best teams out there. And obviously, they just have some players that really hit their shots. I think the two players that have been added to the team for the season, Prophecy and Wrath, have been doing phenomenally. I think those two players have really been killing it ever since joining onto the scene. The traditional players, England, Acid, and Beastly, have also really been performing. You could say England's had a little bit of a slower season than he has in the past. But, I mean, last play day, he really picked it up. And I think overall, he's been maybe stepping back a little bit more for the rest of his teammates to pick it up. So I don't want to say that England's been playing poorly or anything like that. I think this whole team has been playing really, really phenomenally, and it's exciting to see them do well again. They're likely to finish in first, just based on the standings are right now. The big one's going to be their next game against PogChamp. That's on Monday. Basically, the winner of that match will be the winner of the season, assuming that there's no crazy upsets in week number 7, or play day 7, I should say. So I would put Vanquish as the winners of that game, but who knows? Certainly PogChamp could go for that upset. They look to be the favorites for winning this season, though, because, again, they just look so disciplined and also so loose. Like, they really seem to have fun in their games, which I think is really important for helping them not tilt, which is another thing that some of these really young but really good teams that are at the top of Challenger League have been struggling with, and we'll talk about those teams right after this one. So, I don't know. I think Vanquish are a really, really good team, and if you are looking for an organization to support, they're certainly a good one as well. Another good organization to support is Joe Esports LFO. No, this is also a really fun team, and they're also a very good team. They're currently sitting 4th in the standings right now with 17 points. I'd probably give them 3rd. They're another team that has sort of been all over the place. I think at the very start of the season, a lot of people were putting this team up first. First or second, they really exploded onto the scene with some dominant victories over PogChamp in the very first week. And they've kept it up for most of the season. They really didn't have a great showing in the most recent playday, which is why they're a little bit down on my current team rankings. But I think over the course of the season, they've looked really well. They've had some very big explosive players, which has gained them a lot of followers and a lot of fans. They've also just got great personalities on this team. I mean, like, everybody on this squad is like a bundle of joy on Twitter. I mean, these are some really, really genuinely nice and fun guys to interact with. So, you know, they're a team that are hard to dislike for sure. And the fact that they also joined the season and just really had some insane clutch plays. I mean, Wimpy has been phenomenal. Rethinking has had some really explosive plays as well. That's about it. I do have to mention Clicks, because otherwise he's going to watch my videos and bitch at me on Twitter. But the rest of the team have really been putting in work as well. So, like, this is just a team of young gunners that have been very explosive, that are really fun to watch. And they're called Joe Esports. I mean, how do you not love this team? They have been struggling a little bit. Obviously, I touched on it a bit, but in Playday 5, the most recent Playday, they got slapped around pretty hard by Bruh. It was a 7-0 followed by a 7-2, which is really, like, not characteristic of them. It's definitely been their worst loss of the season so far. They also struggled against Vanquish way back in Playday 3, where they got a tie in the first map, but then lost 7-1 in the second map. So I think inconsistency has been big for them, and given their playstyle of being really clutch players, like, come down to the wire and battle it out, that's sort of to be expected. You can't really play a playstyle like that in my mind and expect to be super consistent. So Joe have their faults, and I wouldn't put them up there as the best team in the league anymore. But they're certainly still contenders to win any game that you throw them into, and I think that's a really powerful place to be in. Obviously, I think this team's got a lot of potential. A lot of players on this team have quite a bit to offer, so I think they're really, really good. They do struggle a little bit with, like, counter aggression, and clearing out roamers has shown to be a problem, particularly in that last matchup against Bruh. They were really just not feeling it, trying to root out the roamers of Bruh. So there's some holes for Joe, most notably their inconsistency and their difficulty to deal with roamers, but they're a really fun team, and they're a really fun play style to watch as well, and they're quite good. So shout out to Joe. I think they're a fun team, and they're a good team. Talk about Reckless next. I'm going to talk about this team kind of quickly because I don't have a lot of great things to say about Reckless. They're sitting last in the standings right now. I'd probably put them down there in last as well on a tier list. They can shine against the other low-level teams. I think that they really do shine against uncoordinated teams. If they can get into like the thick of things and really just throw everything up in the air, they do thrive sometimes in those chaotic environments. I think Ultra is a pretty underrated player. I think he's really been showing up again in some of these really chaotic gunfights and some of these chaotic rounds that sort of devolve with not a lot of strategy. But anytime that Reckless tend to go up against a more structured team, they do seem to struggle quite a bit. You can see a lot, like, just based on map selection. Sometimes they go to, like, they'll play a team like Senshi. You know, in the first map, be very close, and, you know, Senshi will really put up a good fight, and Reckless can't really do a whole lot, and that's because it's a good map for Senshi. And then, you know, they'll go into a map where Senshi are a little bit less familiar on, and Reckless can really capitalize off that. So that's nice to see from them, but otherwise, again, I just haven't seen a lot of good over the past couple of weeks. You know, they got rid of Razor, which is a plus for sure, but otherwise, like, I don't know, it hasn't done enough. Bringing Thumbus in has not done enough to elevate this team out of the bottom spot of the standings or on a tier list that I've made in my mind. The last 2 weeks certainly haven't helped them. They, in week 4, or play day 4, I should say, they lost 7-1, 7-1 to Joe, and then 7-1, 7-4 to PogChamp. And those are tough teams, don't get me wrong, those are really tough teams. That's what I'm talking about. Like, when they go against these teams that have even a little bit of structure, they really do fall apart. And they haven't been doing amazingly against, like, the other mid-tier teams in the league either, so it's tough for Reckless. I do hope they improve. Okami are the next team I want to talk about. I was rocking an Okami shirt on the cast last night. So they're another really fun team to watch for different reasons than Joe. I would say they're a little bit worse than Joe. They're sitting in 6th right now on the leaderboards, and I'd probably put them 6th in my mind as well. Again, maybe 7th based on how you want to pair them up against Senshi, but that's a big question mark for me. They certainly are more bold than Senshi, I would say. They like to play a lot of those wacky strategies. They bring in a lot of crazy operators. They were playing Ying before the Ying meta was even a thing. Like, before she got buffed, they were rocking the Ying. They do a lot of, like, Finka strats. They play a lot of Mira. They play a lot of Lion. They played Fuse once. So, you know, that should tell you what you need to know about this team. And they find success every now and again. They do, you know, they have put up some good games against some top teams and some bottom teams, but they've had their struggles as well. They started off a little bit slow, but they did manage to get a tie against Joe in play day number 2. You know, they had some good games against Bra as well. They got a 7-4 victory against them. So when their strats are working, they're really, really working. And they have those flashes of greatness, but they're just not consistent enough. I think sometimes they have a little bit too cute strategies for their own good. You know, they end up kind of throwing away strategies because they really get too complex, they get too jungled up with them. Then sometimes also they just sort of try to play the standard meta, and it also doesn't really go well for them. I don't know if they just aren't as comfortable playing the like standard stuff because they're so used to playing these wacky crazy strats or what, but I don't know. They've been struggling a little bit with that. Clearing Roamers has also been another sticky point for them in a couple of matches. I know particularly when we casted them against Chick Squad last playday, that was something they were struggling with a little bit. So, you know, Okami have their problems for sure, but that's a team with a lot of potential just in the brains of those players and coaches. I think there's a lot of good ideas floating around in there, but they just don't really have I don't have the execution down for all of them, and some of those ideas I think they just need to throw in the trash. But some of them are good, and I like that there's a team at least experimenting with more tools than what's just standard down here in the Tier 2 league. Trick Squad are the next team I want to talk about. This is a very interesting team, probably the most interesting team in my mind out of the bottom 4. They're in 5th right now. I'll probably put them 5th in my tier list as well. They started off the season with not a lot of wins. They were really struggling to get anything going. They only had 1 win coming into play day 5, and they had a few ties, but I think they always sort of looked like a team with a lot of potential. They were getting close on a lot of maps against really all levels of teams, but they really struggled in closing out those rounds. I would say it's kind of similar to Okami. They had some great strategies that were set up. They were maybe a little bit less out of left field, if you want to say, than Okami strats were, but they had some really like solid strategies. Their team play seemed pretty good. But when you got into that crunch time in the very dying seconds of the round, they kind of threw them away. And they were doing a lot of that, like just having a good round. It was going great. And then like crunch time happens and it's like, go, go, go. And it's like, why are you peeking that? How do you miss that shot? Why are you going for that rotation? There's a lot of question marks that appear in the dying minutes of the round. But as of last play day, it seems like they might have been able to fix that. They wiped the floor with Okami in their most recent playday. They also made a roster swap right before that playday, dropping Austin and picking up Roadrunner, which they say has been a big help for them, which is good to see. I mean, no doubt they seem to be really performing a lot better than they were a few weeks ago. It's only one playday that we really have of them popping off more. Even if you go back a playday back, I guess they were tying Vanquish. That's not too bad for playday 4. I didn't realize that. They've been on the up, is what I want to say, and I think that they have had this potential for a long time. Even after the very first playday, I said, you know what, this team's got a lot of great groundwork, but they're just throwing away some of these rounds, and I still believe that, and probably first place is not an option for them, but they really want to push for that top 4 spot. They've got tough games in the last 2 weeks of Challenger League, but if they can win them, they'll absolutely secure that top 4 spot. So this might be an exciting underdog to watch, and I really do want to pay close attention to their next couple of games because this is a team that looks a lot better than when they started, and they might just be able to make that push after being at like the bottom of the leaderboard all season long. They might be able to make that last second jump up into the top 4. So that would be a really exciting thing to see, and I hope that they can surprise some people because Chick Squad for a long time have had potential, and they've just, it seems like they might be on the verge of unlocking it. So that's exciting. Seventh and second last team that I wanted to mention was PogChamp. I don't think I need to introduce you to PogChamp. This is a roster of Pro League and Challenger League veterans. Prod, Chala, Ghost, Trippin, and Filthy is the roster, if you didn't know, and you should recognize some of those players for sure. They're sitting in second right now. They're actually tied with Vanquish for first in points. I would probably put them down to fourth. I think that the other top 4 teams are a little bit better than them just in the games that I've seen. They have a lot of upsides. I think that a lot of these players, I mean, obviously they bring the experience. I think they bring the experience more than even Vanquish do. Maybe less in like the mindset sense, but more so in just like the mid-round decision-making. The game sense has been really on point for PogChamp. Obviously, the individual skill is there. You know, these players hit their shots. Absolutely, they hit their shots. What's nice about PogChamp is we also get to see some players that traditionally have been more like support, like laid back, haven't really gotten to shine in other rosters, really like find their spark. Players like Chala and Ghost, who I would say have been underwhelming on previous like Pro League and Challenger League rosters, have come into this lineup of PogChamp and really performed well. So you like to see that. There's some players in this lineup that have really been overperforming where they have in the past, and so that's really nice to see some of these players finally stepping up and finding their footing. The greatness that I think we all kind of knew they had, but they just haven't really been consistent in showing it off over the past couple of years. Now they're kind of finding that. So that's really nice to see. Again, PogChamp have a lot of upsides, but I think the big thing keeping them from the top 3 in my tier list is just some of their strats are a little bit off. I believe they're the only team in Challenger League without a coach, and I think it hurts them. I don't know if like Drip is secretly trying to coach from the shadows or something, but like they really just don't seem like all of their strategies are super well fleshed out. You know, sometimes they go to like a new map like Theme Park and they kind of stumble all over themselves. You know, sometimes they'll play out a wacky strat like they'll go dual sight on Consulate and bring like a Maestro shotgun. And I don't mean shotgun pistol, I mean shotgun. And it's just like, why? You know, like some of the strats they bring are just like, this is an awful strat, and it was never going to work, and you just threw it around because of it. So I think some of their strategies could take another looking at. But the mechanics are all there, and the coordination is quite good as well. So I'd like to see them have a coach. I really would. It's maybe a little bit late in the season now, and it clearly seems like they don't want a coach. But if they got one, I think it would really elevate their team play. Will they finish in the top 2 of the season? Maybe. Big question mark. Obviously, they play Vanquish in the next playday 6. I expect them to lose, but they could absolutely walk away with, 3 or 4 points from that. That's certainly in the cards. And their last playdays against Okami, again, that should be one that they win, but Okami can trick you up sometimes. And PogChamp also have a bit of a history of losing to some of those lower tier teams. We talked about how PogChamp had lost 7-2 to Senshi just back in Playday 4. Their very opening week, they got kind of steamrolled by Joe. Not steamrolled, but upset by Joe would be a better word to use there. And not that Joe were a bad team, but like this team has a lot of expectations, and I think they have to some extent underperformed those expectations. And so that could be something to worry about if you're PogChamp. But I do think they're a quite good team. And top 2 is still very obtainable for them, especially if they can show up big against Vanquish. Last team to talk about is Bruh. They currently sit in 3rd. Is that correct? Yeah, they currently sit in 3rd with 19 points, but they're top of my tier list. Bruh have seemingly had it all this season, and they've been really the standout, like, shocking team to me. I did not give this team enough credit coming into the season, and then I have watched them win after win after win, and it hasn't been all wins, but it's been a lot of wins from them, and they've really shown that they are one of those top caliber teams. So it's nice. It's nice to be surprised by a team like Bra, who are similar to a team like Joe in that they're a very young team. They got a silly name. They're kind of known for just being fraggers, but I think they have a couple advantages on Joe. And I think those really decided to shine in the most recent matchup where they beat Joe. I think in particular, they're not too afraid of playing some of those more strat-heavy playstyles and holds where, they go for either roam clears while they're playing like Lion or Dokkaebi or Ying or something where like Joe are really hesitant to play those operators. Or whether they're just more so feeling like, going for a really heavy like intelligence-based hold, right? I think some of their holds are really actually underrated. I think their coordination is phenomenal. I think that this team kind of has it all. Their preparation's been really good too. I mean, Hai is their coach, and I've interviewed him like 6 times this season. It's ridiculous. And it seems like he's really been prepping with this team, and they've been putting in a lot of work behind the scenes. It certainly does seem like it's showing. Brad just really walking every game prepared, and in terms of consistency, they've been pretty good. I mean, they did lose to Okami in Playday 4 in one map. They won the other map against them. They had close 7-5, 7-5 loss to PogChamp. But otherwise, this team has looked pretty good throughout the season. And so they're probably my top team for now. Will they be able to leapfrog the 2 teams ahead of them and actually finish in first place for the season? Probably not. Because probably Vanquish and PogChamp will both win their Week 7 matches. Really what Bra have to hope is that they can, close out these last 2 games without any mistakes. That shouldn't be too hard. They play, who do they play? They play Reckless and Shook Squad. Which Shook Squad might be a challenge, but like they should be able to take those 2 games, and then I guess they're just hoping that Vanquish and PogChamp kind of split the points when they play against each other 3-3 or something similar like that, and then first place is definitely obtainable. But I don't know. Cow Tire has to rely a little bit on luck in order to really finish this season out in first place. Either way, though, they've definitely shown themselves to be a really top team, and so I'm happy to see that from them. And those are the teams that I wanted to talk about for North American Challenger League. That's my thought from casting the first 5 playdays. I'll be casting the 6th playday as well, which should be coming out again. I think that's tomorrow if I get this out on Sunday, as I'm planning to. Oh, am I gonna get this out on Sunday? Well, I don't think it's coming out till Monday. Games are today then. It should come out Monday morning, and then you should be able to see the matches Monday evening starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. So there's some really exciting ones there. Vanquish versus PogChamp is going to be the big one. Probably going to if it goes decisively, that's almost for sure going to be the winner of the season right there. If it's a 3-3 split, it's up in the air. If it's a 6-0 in terms of points, then that's probably your winning team. Playday 7, I will not be casting. That'll be May 1st, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, but should still be a good one as we really solidify the positions of these 8 teams. But that's it from me. There'll be more videos coming soon now that I'm not knee-deep in exams. So subscribe if you like them, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.